Folks, I'm here in Atlanta at the 38th annual conference of the 100 Black Men of America. They, of course, have been meeting this week, focusing on a variety of issues. I came to participate in a panel talking about the black vote. And then, of course, late yesterday, the White House announced that Vice President Kamala Harris will be making her stop here for her economic empowerment tour. And so I decided to stick around to cover that particular event. Of course, she spoke to a packed house here talking about what the administration has done in a variety of areas. It was a conversation moderated by Steve Harvey. Here is some of what they had to discuss.
It's a lot of things you've been doing. This past fall, you had a Fight for Our Freedoms college tour.
Yeah.
And you talked to over 15,000 college students to expand upon all of the urgent issues that concerned us as a people. And you've been traveling across the country doing a lot of other things. And just recently, after addressing the epidemic of gun violence and women's rights, reproductive rights, and all of this that seem to have taken away, you've launched an economic opportunity tour. So tell us a little bit about this tour and why you launched it.
So I'll start by talking about where we are right now. So this hotel, many may know, was referred to as the Hotel of Hope. This was the only hotel that allowed Dr. King to speak. And it was here in this very ballroom that Dr. King gave one of his last speeches. I think it was the last one in his Poor People's Campaign, talking about, of course, what he was on the verge of doing, which was to merge the civil rights movement which is, of course, a movement about justice, with the movement around economic justice. And it was shortly after he was here that he was assassinated. And so the symmetry of being here as the first Black Vice President of the United States to talk about the importance of growing economic opportunity for the community is something that I feel very strongly about. And so I'm doing this tour. Thank you. So I'm doing this tour mostly because I believe that for those of us who do the kind of work that our administration is doing, that President Biden and I are doing, in order for it to be real, it's got to hit the streets. And the only way that that will happen in a meaningful way is if the people are aware of what is available to them and then take advantage of that. So I wanted to come and speak to 100 Black men, to this organization, because I know who everyone here is. This is a room full of leaders of every age who can help get the word out about what we have made available, because it's so important people take advantage of what's available. So I'm doing this tour to, one, highlight the importance of speaking truth about the obstacles that have existed for access to capital, for home ownership, for Black folks, and what we are doing to actually deal with those obstacles in a way that we create opportunity. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, for example, what we're doing around reduction of debt, debt forgiveness, what we are doing to address the racial wealth gap as it relates to a number of issues, including access to capital for our small businesses and entrepreneurs, what it means in terms of housing discrimination, and the work that we need to do and will continue to do to address those issues. And really the essence of this tour is born out of a belief that people need more than just what is necessary to get by. We want to get ahead. And we know that it is important that we have reduced Black unemployment to historic lows, but that's a baseline, which is that people have a job. In our community, we also have ambition, aspirations, incredible ideas. And the division between that and actually being able to put it to use is often about access to the relationships of the capital that can take us from those good ideas to creating a business, starting a business, growing a business. So that's why I'm doing this tour.
All right, folks, one of the big issues that Vice President Kamala Harris talked about was home ownership. And what the Biden-Harris administration is doing in that area, especially when it comes to dealing with racism and appraisals.
Before y'all start calling my radio show and DMing me, talking about why you ain't asked no hard-hitting questions, that ain't what this is. I'm throwing a lob. This is an alley-oop for a dunk, because this administration needs to get the word out of what they're actually doing and what they're actually accomplishing, so we can stop all this foolishness about what you're doing for black people. Can't nobody come out with no agenda and call it this for black people and expect to get in the White House. You got to play the game different. Y'all know what this is. So now this next question is another lob for her to dunk. Because they done a lot, man. But we see, I'm on this radio show and I'm hearing all these people talking about, I'm not voting if they not doing nothing for us. Listen to me. If you do not vote, the analytics will show. They know how many women vote, they know the age you are when you vote. If we don't vote, how we gonna ask for something next time? If you ain't got no voting power, you talking about reparations. Ain't nobody finna give you no reparations and you don't vote. Oh, why you think they finna give us some money? No how, man. I hope they do. They owe us. I'll go down there. I'm sorry. Madam, I know I ain't coming back next year. I already appreciate y'all having me. Madam Vice President, this is another part of this conversation because it affects us all. It's about housing. And another thing that you've been involved in over the years has been about housing, and it remains a priority for families all across the country. So talk more about the work that's being done to address the obstacles that's being presented in front of all of us as we try to gain housing.
So you're right, Steve. I mean, back when I was Attorney General of California, I sued the 5 biggest banks of the country during the foreclosure crisis. And you'll remember that a lot of black families were targeted with those promises of these loans, 0 payment down, and people ended up going bankrupt. So this is something I focused on for a long time. And here again, let's look at it through the context of obstacles and opportunities. So home ownership is probably one of the most effective and efficient and fastest ways to grow intergenerational wealth. Just think about it in this context. You own a home and then your child says, you know, Daddy, I want to go to Howard University. Yes. And you can say to your child, honey, you don't have to take out some loans to do that. I'll take some equity out of the house. Or let's say your daughter says, I want to start a small business. And you can say to your child, honey, you don't have to take out a loan. I will take some equity out of the house to give you some startup capital. Intergenerational wealth. Okay, but that's a fact. Now let's talk about other facts. Let's talk about, we don't even need to go as far back as 40 acres and a mule never happened. Let's go to the GI Bill. You know, we just celebrated D-Day. So remember, we call them the greatest generation, those mostly men who went to war and put America on the map as a leader around global peace and security. So the United States government, in essence, said, the people said, you are the greatest generation. You sacrificed so much. We owe you, and we believe in you. And there were policies then to boost their standing through loans, specific grants given to them to buy homes. So here was this incredible boost. Here's the reality. Black servicemen, because of what we know to be racial bias and racism in the system, did not receive those loans at the same rate. So where you saw public policy that was about a boost, right? We had disparities before that happened. And then you see the disparities grow even more. Take into account segregation, redlining, urban renewal, where in so many black cities in particular, they would build freeways straight through the neighborhood, which would cut the business community, commerce off from the neighborhoods. Over and over again, we have seen these inflection points in the history of our country that have set folks back around home ownership. So one thing that we have to do is speak truth about that. And the second piece of it then is, what are we going to do to accommodate the fact that we have far too many folks who, for example, in black families, there's no history in their immediate family of home ownership. What are we doing to give them a boost? So we are proposing a policy, which we are on track to getting done, so that if you are the first generation in your family to go for home ownership, you'll get a $25,000 credit for down payment. And if you are first in your family generationally, first-time home ownership, qualify for $400 a month in credits to go toward paying your mortgage. So these are some of the issues that we are seeking to address. There's another issue. Home appraisals. Again, it's about speaking truth, right? So, and I have to give great credit to the former Secretary of HUD, Marcia Fudge, who we worked on this for a while, and so this is where it is. Home appraisals. How many people here have heard the story about a black family wants to sell their home or take out a second mortgage, needs to get the home appraised for its value? And they call in the appraiser. The appraiser comes in and appraises it for a certain number. The family knows that's too low. So then they get in touch with some friends of the family who are white and say, why don't y'all come over with your family pictures? We'll take ours down. You invite an appraiser over. The house appraises for higher. Racial bias in home appraisals is a real issue. Again, contributing to what we would see then in terms of disparities around the ability to accumulate and grow wealth. So what we have done is we are now requiring that home appraisers receive racial bias training to address, again, what are these seemingly small issues, but are very big issues when you talk about the overall ability of folks to catch up and to build the kind of wealth that we know is an entitlement, is a right of every hardworking person. So that's part of what we're doing on home ownership.
Folks, after the session, I caught up with several folks, including Ambassador Andrew Young, Pastor Jamal Bryant, and others who shared their thoughts on what the Vice President had to say.
I can't think of anybody that stays on target as regularly and as timely as she is. We don't ever respect our own. It took us a long time to get used to the fact that Barack Obama was president. Now we know he was amongst the best. I think the same with Kamala Harris. I think what she does in the rooms that we don't go into is you always have a voice. Actually, she comes from Howard University, and in California, she was the district attorney. She was the attorney general of San Francisco. She was the senator from California, and now she's been vice president. And she's always done well.
Today, Kamala Harris spoke to 100 black men, not with fluff, but with substance on what's on the line in terms of returning citizens, equity, access to capital, and housing. It's clear for us the road to November is Biden-Harris.
Quick, any thoughts about the Vice President's session?
The Vice President's session was great, and she empowered us to understand exactly what the administration has been doing throughout their tour. So we look forward to going to the polls and expressing our votes.
Very excited about the economic tour, the ideas they have about home ownership, amazing. And Steve Harvey did a great job too. it was amazing experience. Really liked it.
Thoughts on what the VP had to say today?
Extremely inspiring. Hey man, look, this is probably the best conversation I've had or seen with her. I mean, she came with it, and you know, it's not like she was very natural. It wasn't like she was trying to put on her shoulder or anything. It was like, you know, she was sincere. Something like what you do. So, you know, I was very impressed, man, how she rolled, man. It was excellent.
It's extremely inspiring, especially us, our chapter, being from the Bay Area. See somebody homegrown on a national stage representing, you know, what she's done for the black community, specifically around business loans and debt relief. That's something that's extremely important and something we've talked about here at this conference. Is how entrepreneurs such as, you know, small business owners, black-owned businesses can not only, you know, lay out the groundwork to be funded, but take advantage of federal, national, state, and local RFPs, requests for proposals, those contracts. Not enough of those contracts go to our black businesses. If more of them knew that they could apply and, like you said, get renewed time after time after time again, we'd be more empowered. It's an awesome conversation.
All right, cool. Anybody else?
Look at that, man. Yes.
I think it was just motivational, inspirational, and it's really a great example of leadership and how we need to follow the leader on this one so we can reach the goals that have collectively been set to improve our community.
Really appreciate her coming and whatnot. It was a lot of stuff that I learned in the session that I wasn't aware of before. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. We definitely gonna do our part by, you know, spreading the word on everything that she was talking about today. Yeah.
I feel like it's important to be educated on what the administration is actually doing, and she did just that to ensure that we can get the right results come November.
We'll go.
They say knowledge is power, and Kamala Harris just taught me a lot. So I feel.
All right, cool. All right. What's your thoughts on Vice President, what she had to say today?
I think it was great. I think it was informational. I enjoyed myself.
Cool.
I think something that's really important is getting people registered to vote, especially during the Juneteenth holiday when we think about our communities and how important it is to strengthen them.
I think it was amazing that she shared exactly what it is the administration is doing to help our communities. Too often we criticize without information. Now we've got information, the 100 Black Men of America, through its membership, got to make sure that the community is aware that this administration is supporting our small businesses and our young people.
I like how she stated all the stuff that she's done in the past and stuff that she did before she was vice president to help change the community, and about the debt. And even if you have a criminal record, now you can apply for a loan. And I also liked how she said everybody needs to vote.
Anybody else?
I like how she talked about home ownership in the black community and the advantages of being a homeowner and the challenges that come with being a homeowner. Even when you become a homeowner and you're black, it's just more challenges that's added on to it. And I just like how she talked about like different stuff in the black community.
Cool.
You know, I really like how, I was really moved by what she was saying, you know, especially when she was talking about, you know, how she eat no for breakfast. Like, you know, that's really motivated me to, like, you know, don't let people tell me no and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I thought it was really nice. She was talking about how they're helping the economy and that the policies that they are putting the policies into fruition. I really, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed her telling the youth to vote and how important it was.
My panel, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, President Emerita of Bennett College. She's an economist, author, coming to us out of D.C. Matt Manning, civil rights attorney out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Kelly Bethea, communications strategist out of D.C. Julianne, I want to start with you. 100 Black Men of America. There's a lot of stuff when it comes to education, mentoring, also when it comes to economics. So the vice president coming here, talking about the economic issues that they've done. And she said, I need y'all going back, touting this stuff, telling people what needs to happen. In the session that I did earlier with Cliff Albright with Black Voters Matter, also with a couple other folks, I made clear that what has to happen, we as African Americans cannot be waiting on a party, cannot be waiting on anyone like that. We need to be saying, what is the message that we are conveying to African Americans about what the administration has done and not done, but also contrast that with what we are hearing from Donald Trump. And so when we do that, I think we have to make it plain to people so they understand what has taken place, and we can get rid of this. Nothing is, they ain't done nothing. I ain't heard nothing. No, there has to be people communicating. Got to have people communicating what the truth is.
You know, Roland, it's a very corrosive narrative to say that Biden and Harris have done nothing. It's really corrosive, and I don't know where that's coming from. She laid it out perfectly. By the way, greetings from Tulsa. You were just here. I'm here right now. The people love you here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm here at a reparations conference. And I mention that because the vice president was talking about some of the very issues that require reparations. The gap in terms of housing, the GI Bill, which created, frankly, the white middle class with the very generous home loans, but basically caused the wealth gap to even wider. Only 2 black men in Mississippi, Roland, were able to get business loans under the GI Bill because each loan had to go through a board, which was clearly in Mississippi very racist. That's a source on that is Ira Katz Nelson when affirmative action was white. And we could go down the list. So she, first of all, she's very good. I don't know these people who keep talking about she isn't good. You look at those clips. She comported herself well. She got to the point. She said what she had to say. She gave credit was due, such as Marcia Fudge, a former HUD secretary. I don't know what anybody could complain about, but you know there are haters in our community, and there's a negativity strain that goes through so many people. They want to be negative. Nothing can be right now. You know, Biden Harris isn't perfect, but how could it be with the legislative process we have? Nothing is going to get done until after November. But what we must do before November is ensure that we get out, that the word gets out. I like the fact that you have those young people, Roland, the young brothers who were just as cute as they wanted to be, and but also were very, very on point. And 2 of them actually said, I learned a lot. And that's the point. If you learn, if you understand what's going on, then you know that Biden they have earned your vote. They have literally earned your vote. And to not vote is stupid and ill-informed. And if somebody is mad that I called them stupid, you know, just stop being stupid. But it's ill-informed, but it also gives the orange man credit. And it gives him sway. It puts a thumb on the table toward him. The Democratic Party has always been able to count on the black vote, and this is an instance where we should still be there for the Democratic Party. Why? Because Biden-Harris has been there for us.
Well, here's one of the things that we talked about here. Cliff Albright made this point. Matt, because a young woman asked the question. She said, "Hey, what do I say to my fellow young people who say I don't like Trump, I don't like Biden?" And Cliff said, "Don't make it about the person, make it about the policies that you care about." And to ask them, what are the 3 or 4 issues that matter to you? Then I followed up by saying, once you do that, you then say, okay, this is where Biden-Harris stands on that. This is what they've done. This is what Trump, whoever his VP is going to be, this is what they're saying about that. And now folks are armed with the information. The problem that we have is you got people who, as Julian remarked, saying, oh, they ain't done nothing. Well, first of all, when you hear that phrase, that's just stupid. So you then got to say, okay, well, what is it that you care about? That, to me, is how we have to be communicating with people, forcing them to express what the issues are, and then we can now say, here are the facts.
And I think part and parcel with being effective in communicating that is communicating intended deliverables. You know, when we talk about haters, when we talk about people who have issues, as Dr. Malveaux alluded to, with people who are haters, a lot of times they make perfect the enemy of good. But what I think was especially brilliant about this is that she had at least a few deliverables where she explicitly said, we intend to do this in terms of a credit. We intend to do that in terms of an amount of money that you get to pay toward your mortgage. And I think that's particularly good at this time because we've talked about it on the show many times. There is a feeling in the black community and otherwise, frankly, of economic insecurity right now. So the idea that the Biden-Harris administration has at the forefront of their messaging, here are intended deliverables, even if those don't work out, even if they try to do it by executive order and there's some attack on it legally, I think it's very good messaging. And I think it's important to show to people that you're seeing what it is they need. That's what it comes down to. Vote who you think is going to help you get what you need. And I think that she did a great job in delineating what they're intending to do and address some of these economic woes via these intended programs.
It's about specifics. Kelly, we were there in Detroit. She was just in Charlotte the other day. They kicked this thing off in Atlanta. And this actually was added very late. I didn't get the notice until yesterday afternoon evening. The vice president was coming here. They had to shift the schedule around to accommodate her. And so this wasn't on the schedule earlier. She kicked off this economic tour here in Atlanta with the conversation that was moderated by the brothers from Earn Your Leisure. But I do think was important. And Kelly, I've been saying for the last 3 years that there should not be a major black conference that happens in this country that either Biden or Harris is not at. And my whole deal is, if you're talking about 100 black men, obviously you've got coming up NAACP, you got National Urban League, you got the links happening next week in Dallas, you got the AKAs who are also meeting in Dallas, you've got the Alphas Leadership Conference happening in Chicago, a constitutional conference. That should be their focus. That is driving that message home to the key constituency, because black women vote at a higher rate than anybody else. African Americans are number 2.
Absolutely. And when you have a rollout plan such as that, where you're hitting these conferences, you're hitting these webinars, you're hitting these town halls that are centered around black voters and black issues, it combats the narrative that they're not listening to us. Everything works that way. So I appreciate the effort. I do wish it was a little bit earlier. I wish this was a more comprehensive plan that spanned the course of 4 years. And once that, and then within that plan, they really bring it home as far as media coverage and all of these things. But we're here now. I'm appreciative, and hopefully it's enough to get us through November and beyond.
If there is one critique that I would have, and I keep saying this, and the White House needs to do it. And so for instance, during the session, the vice president alluded to student loan debt. And she said, hey, if you know someone, ask them. This is a perfect example to me where they should say, if you have gotten student loan debt in this room, stand up. They should already have people who are identified who they can call out by name. The reason I say that, because when the local media is here, you want them then trying to go find those people. The administration also, remember, 41% of black-owned businesses went under during COVID. They brought back 75% of those businesses. To me, you want to have those folks in the audience as well that you can point to as success stories. And so that's just something that if I'm them, I'm adding to it because, again, those are better messengers to what we're talking about, as opposed to just her talking. Imagine if you have those students or those individuals talking about how I had a woman who was sitting next to me. He said, my sister got $100,000 of student loan debt wiped out. If she was here, she would be rejoicing. That's just one of the things that I think that they need to always add. If I'm Biden Harris, I don't speak anywhere, and I'm not acknowledging who in that audience has gotten student loan debt relief. Got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to chat with the president of the 100 Black Men of America about what their focus is when it comes to reaching black men, when it comes to vote, but also their agenda when it comes to economics. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support us in what we do. Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. So you're checking money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 2037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. We'll be right back. We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues. Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere. It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared. Folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We're here in Atlanta at the Hyatt Regency, where the 100 Black Men of America are holding their 38th annual conference. Milton Jones is the president of the organization. Milton, good to see you. It's been quite a busy week. First off, it's been a tough year and a half for the 100 Black Men. Longtime leader Tommy Dortch, very dear friend of this show, who passed away. So just talk about just that transition going from his leadership and he was such just a force for the 100 Black Men.
Well, certainly many people identify Tommy Dortch and 100 Black Men of America as the same. Right. Tommy is a person, and he was a dear brother, and he's looking down on us from heaven right now, there's no doubt. But we are doing exactly what he would want done, and that is and we had an orderly transition after he passed away. Immediately after he passed, our vice chairman, Al Dotson, stepped into the role. Then we had an election, which I was able to win, and I was installed last September. These were all a part of the plans we have in place of succession as an organization. And so, because the work goes on, the promises to the young people we serve, to the communities who look to us for leadership, don't go away. And Tommy wouldn't want those to be dropped to the ground. We certainly honor his memory, and we help extend the strength of his legacy by what we do to keep this a strong and ongoing organization. Losing him as a leader was difficult, but as I said, we're doing exactly what he would want us doing. And that is, as he always said, keep it moving. And
the reason why that's important is because leadership transitions are critical. I talked about that with Rainbow Push when Freddie Haynes resigned. I said the best example out there is what NAACP, LDF, how they transitioned from Shirley Eiffel to Janae Nelson. And for Black organizations, unfortunately, they've often been built around personalities, yes, as opposed to understanding that it's the organization and you have to have proper transitions when you go from one leader to the next.
Exactly. And that is certainly something that we've built toward for quite some time. We have a Leadership Institute. We actually had our third cohort graduate this year. We had it years ago and stopped it, and then we brought it back 3 years ago under Tommy's second term as chair. And I've certainly continued that as chair myself. And that gives us a growth in new leaders, 24 per year, to either go into the communities, to chapters, or roles in our national organization. So making sure that we are in a position to have orderly change and orderly change of leadership and continued sustained growth and effectiveness is critical to us, and we all believe in it.
For folks who don't know what 100 Black Men does, what do you do?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. We do a lot of things. We have more than 100 chapters across the U.S.
Tommy made me a member, honorary member, so I know, but folk like that may not know.
I appreciate the opportunity to tell them.
There you go.
We have over 100 chapters across the U.S. We have a chapter in London, a chapter in Turks and Caicos, so we're an international organization with a heavy national tilt. And we stand on 4 key pillars of mentoring, education, health and wellness, and economic empowerment. We're the largest African-American male-led mentoring organization in the country. We model the behavior of what they see as what they'll be. And so we lead young people to better outcomes in life by demonstrating example, spending time with them, listening to them, and mentoring them so that while we blaze trails, we pave them, they get a running start, they go much further than we could, and that's what progress is all about.
We talk about those chapters. One of the things the vice president said today, and what I also said earlier to the folks, that was a late addition to this program. Yes. The reason I know that because I didn't get the email from the White House until yesterday evening. My producer told me, I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't seen that. So I had to change my flight, change everything. So I had to move some stuff around. But one of the things that she talked about was she said she needed the folks in the room to take this message and beyond. During the Black voter session, I said that it's incumbent upon there being these mini town halls all around the country having these conversations. what has been a West Bellamy, Antoine Seabright. Y'all have a 16-city tour, having these conversations. Talk about that.
Well, thanks for that opportunity, and thank you for being here. I'm sorry that you had to make last-minute
It's all
plans,
good. It happens. We're used to it in the news business.
And we appreciate it. We do have, it's actually now a 17-city tour.
Okay.
And the first stop was in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and we're continuing around the country. And so what we believe is this, that we have got to make sure that people know you need to get registered and vote. And if you're registered, you need to go vote. When you think about what our ancestors did, how hard they fought just to get the right to vote, and we can't begin to take that for granted. Once you start taking rights for granted, then all of a sudden people can take them away, and then you get upset. So getting educated about the vote, going to vote, helping others get educated about the vote is something we see as critical. What prompted us to do this is when we saw the Supreme Court decision last year, we said, okay, we're angry. Of course we're angry. A lot of organizations are angry. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to channel that into action? We're going to get people registered to vote. We're going to change the people who lead and make laws. And as we do that as an organization and wake our people up, we're not going to tell them who to vote for, but we are going to tell them to vote. And when we can demonstrate that we have X number of people that are going to the polls, that we have voting power, then that makes up for what we might not have in capital power.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and when you think about the past, that was the case. We've always been, chasing capital, and we're still doing it, and we're committed to that. I'll come back to that in a minute on economic empowerment. But the fact is, in the meantime, around having the power to vote and exercising that power makes us a force to be reckoned with, makes us a group to be listened to. Not just us, the 100 Black men, but all of us as African Americans.
And it's not just, hey, we need you to vote, get registered to vote, but it's also, I believe, explaining to people that here are the policies that we care about. This is what's being done. This is what's not being done. This is what we should be advocating for. And this is where individuals stand. And what I explain to a lot of organizations that are 501c3, the law says that you can't endorse.
Right.
But you can say, these are the issues that we care about. This is where Biden-Harris lines up. This is where Trump lines up. This is where this candidate lines up, and this candidate lines up. And now people understand from an issue base in terms of where the candidates stand. And to me, I think that's what's needed because not everybody is fully aware and engrossed in this every single day.
I think you're exactly right. And that is really not only something we can do, it's something we must do. I mean, we can't sit back, we can't sit at home and wonder how things are going to turn out. We've got to go make it happen. We've got to get educated about the issues. And that is another part of our tour, is to make sure people know what key issues are. And Vice President Harris said today, as you said earlier, people need to get the word out. People need to know what's possible. Just last night here at the same conference, we had our business summit, and we had Fortune 100 companies, we had African American business owners that are members of our organization, and also local members, business owners who are not, minority business owners who are not members of our organization, come and actually sit down at the table and not just talk about wouldn't it be nice to do business, but actually doing business.
Right.
And so as we look at our businesses growing and scaling, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, we've got many more companies that have $400, $500 million of annual revenue, if not $1 billion, and if not $3 billion. Why not? There's no limit to it. We got $300 billion companies. We got $1 trillion companies. And so we know there's no upper limit to how big a company can get, but we limit ourselves if we don't help ourselves. And so that kind of thing, and then hearing what opportunities are out there, what is it that the government is doing, and what is it that companies are doing, and how are we doing business across our community? How many times does a dollar change hands before it leaves our community? When we look at other communities. These are the kinds of things we want to educate our young people on. We have 300 mentees, 300 young people under the age of 20 in our conference out of 1,200 people here. And they need to see the possibilities. They got to hear this message today. They got that opportunity to hear the messages from Steve Harvey and from Vice President Harris.
And of course, at the breakfast, John Hope Bryant.
Breakfast, they heard from John Hope Bryant. And they heard that message from me yesterday. And they heard that message from others yesterday and today, and they'll hear it more tomorrow. Here's what's really interesting. Tomorrow morning, the young people who are at this conference, many of whom did not know each other before they got here, will run a breakfast and demonstrate their talent and run the entire 2-hour breakfast. in 3 days of coming together. That's how fast our young people can learn. Yesterday we had a group, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, both of whom had already graduated from high school, a 16-year-old who's graduated from college and has an MBA. And they talked about how fast they can learn if people get out of their way, if the system facilitates their learning. Most of them, all of them were homeschooled. But the fact is that we have genius in our community. Mm-hmm. We need to encourage that genius and to guide it to make a difference and to be leaders of tomorrow. Many of the leaders we know today were 15, 16 years old when they went to college. Mm-hmm. And so it can be done, has been done, and will continue to be done. And that's why our theme is future-proofing, to make sure that we're making the future relevant to our young people and that we're relevant to them as we work together to make it happen.
One of the things, last question for me, one of the things that I said in our session that I would love to see 100 Black Men of America do is all of these corporations made all of these pledges in the wake of the death of George Floyd. And the reality is there really hasn't been an organization that said, we're going to make it our business to hold you accountable and to literally pull the data and say, okay, y'all pledged $15 billion. Where is it? What have you done? Because I think, and the reason I think it has to happen from an organizational standpoint is because when you bring organizational heft, all of a sudden it's not one person, 5 people, 10 people. It's now all of a sudden it's thousands of people. And then all of a sudden, then we pull in alphas and deltas and AKs and other groups. Now all of a sudden they look up and go, oh, wait a minute. We now got organizations that are representing 7 million Black folks. We're going to have to respond to this. And I think a lot of people have gotten off the hook just by, sprinkling sponsorship money left and right, as opposed to the billions of dollars they said they were going to commit.
Well, you make a great point. One of the things that we've got to make sure we all do as organizations is have data around our activities, around the work we do. We all have great anecdotes. We're working very hard as an organization to build stronger data around exactly how many people we work with. Armed with that, it positions us to do exactly what you're talking about.
Well, feel free to call because we do the data every day on the show. So we live in data. And so just so y'all know, it was about, let's see, what time is it? It was about 6.5 hours ago. Milton was like, I would like to get on your show. I was like, all y'all got to do is call a brother.
And here you are.
See how I work?
I see how you work.
See, when you own it, you ain't got to call nobody.
Yeah, you're right.
I told you. I said, just hit a brother. And so you're on the show. Milton, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
I look forward to being on again.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. Kelly, I want to start with you. The point I made there with Milton, I just fundamentally believe that in order for us to really move this, we've got to have our Black organizations seizing the opportunity, taking the mantle, and driving this. And that is really holding these corporations accountable for all the commitments, but also using organization that we have. Because this is what's about Black America, especially Divine Nine and others. Look, we are vertically integrated and we're horizontal, meaning we're international, national, regional, state, local. And I don't believe for African Americans, whether we're talking about Divine Nine, whether we're talking about Masons, Prince Hall Masons, Eastern Star, Lynx, Boulay, you name it, that we're not properly using our Black infrastructure to drive messaging, to drive dialogue, but also to maximize our economic power.
Sure. I think that a key to achieving what you're describing is real comprehensive collaboration, right? And frankly, not to step on any toes regarding this matter, but setting aside the egos that are associated with each individual organizations that you called out, right? I'm not saying that, one thinks that they're better than the other and da-da-da. Maybe they do. I'm not a part of every organization, right? But when you need things done, you cannot do it alone. And just because you have an organization with a lot of people in it, the more people, the better, especially when it comes to Black people and the history of our culture and how we typically get things done. SNCC didn't get civil rights passage. They didn't get that done by themselves. NAACP didn't get fair housing passed by themselves. It was a collective, collaborative, comprehensive effort across the board. And until we put egos aside, until we put grudges aside, let's call a thing, we can't get nearly as close to where we need to be until we put those things aside and truly comprehensively work together.
Matt is living in silos. And so the way I see it is we don't need 15 organizations doing the exact same thing. And so if this organization is focusing on this area, cool, y'all got it. We're going to focus on this over here. But when I talk about this election, when I talk about public policy, what's happening on the federal level, state level, county, local level, the thing that I keep saying is I'm not waiting for a campaign. These town halls, these discussions, their 17-city tour, every organization should be doing that. And guess what? They should be live streaming those events. They should be pushing that information out and allowing people to be able to ask questions, people who don't know, because what we're seeing right now, there is a lack of information, a lack of knowledge about what is going on in the country. There's a lack of civics and understanding there. And this is where I think Black organizations can play a huge role in bridging that gap.
I think you led into this brilliantly into my commentary, because one of the things I was thinking as Kelly was speaking is I think what a lot of the organizations have to do is play to their strengths, right? I mean, talking about economics, if you're an organization that is primarily focused on economics, that's going to be important to make sure that not only what you're giving to the people is consistent with your message and your narrative, but also that you are basically subject matter experts on it, so it's important for each of those organizations to see where they can be most impactful and to obviously focus on that. But in addition to that, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because one of the other things I think is incumbent on the organizations is to recognize that really the optimal circumstances for those organizations to refine the message and give it to its members, and then for that to reverberate out to everyone who's not in their membership. And obviously that's part of what we're talking about. But, those organizations are a relatively small part of the Black population in the United States, right? But everybody knows in politics, one of the most impactful things you can do is go and tell someone else why you're voting for a particular person, what you like about their policies. I've learned that in local politics, that there are often people who will say, oh, okay, if you're the person saying I should vote for this guy, then I'll go vote for him or go vote for her because I trust your word on it. And that's essentially what you're talking about with these organizations. And they play a very important role in making sure that not only their membership gets that, but that it reverberates out to those who are not members so that they can have the same benefit of that information.
Julian, people keep talking about, Black men and what they're doing and what they're not doing. Okay, this is real simple. 100 Black Men of America, Alphas, Kappas, Omegas, Sigmas, Iotas, Prince Hall Mason, church men's groups, all of those groups should be having conversation town halls, specifically talking to brothers about the election and public policy. They don't have to ask permission. They don't have to ask a campaign. They don't have to ask a mayor or anybody else. They can do that. Our community, every single week in some city, there should be some type of conversation happening where we're reaching people, going into communities. I had a brother stood up in the session we did, Giuliani, from Milwaukee. and he asked the question. He said, "Hey, you know, what can we do to get young people to vote?" I said, "I'm glad." I said, I said, "Where are you from?" I said, "You're from a city where 50,000 fewer people voted in 2022 than 2018, and had those 50,000 people voted, Mandela Barnes would be the United States Senator." I said, "So you need to go back to Milwaukee, pull the voting data, look at that data, and see where are the areas they didn't vote in 2022 compared to 2018, and have your town hall discussions there." That's how granular we need to be operating when it comes to these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Roland. I mean, I think that black men are getting a bad rap these days, especially when I think about some significant losses we just experienced. Dr. Nathan Hare, who was defined as the father of Black Studies, started the Black Studies Department at SF State. He made his transition this week. And of course, we lost Reverend James Lawson. I know you tributed him last week. These are brothers that we need to hold up and think about when you think about their examples of leadership and scholarship. And you're absolutely right about how granular we need to get to look at who voted, who didn't vote. You could go precinct by precinct to see where the fall off has been. Now it's work, but guess what? It's going to be a lot more work if that orange man gets into the White House and starts attacking us even more systematically than he already has. So, I mean, I encourage brothers, and Kelly is just so on point. And we don't like to talk about the egos that ruin our movement. We are basically our own worst enemy when it comes to some of this work. But this one, I mean, I call some black people, that is, ancient historians, because they can tell you who ticked them off 10 years ago. And they can give you the detail about it, and they're still not speaking to the person. And you're like, it was all that? You know, I mean, unless she slept with your man, and even then.
It'll be the most minor thing.
Yeah. So I think that it's really, let's get over the egos. Let's get more granular. Everybody do something. You're right. There are 50 cities that are, we can look at the blackest cities and say, is there some kind of town hall somewhere in that city? It doesn't have to be done by the same organization, but we have so many darn organizations. Every time you turn around, somebody is starting a new organization, usually because they can't get along with the people in the other organization. We have fewer organizations and more work. That would be great. But, you know, I especially like the point you made about the money. It was $46 billion, Roland, that was pledged to Black community organizations. No, to the Black community generically. That means to nobody. Less than $5 billion of it has been committed or spent. Much of it has come from banking, where basically they make a profit off of the money that they give, because basically you pay a mortgage. So no one gave you anything except for this great program that the vice president is talking about, with a $25,000 credit and some mortgage assistance in the first couple years of your mortgage. But we can all do more. This is crunch time and crisis time. As I said earlier, I'm in Tulsa with a reparations retreat from First Repair, and people have gotten up to vent about the trouble that we're in as a people. And my advice to everyone is, you know, look around you. What can you do to make a difference? Who can you get out to vote? And don't just register the people. If you register people, get a list of who you registered, and then call them as soon as early voting begins and say, come on, what are you going to do? Are you going to vote? Vote early. Don't say vote often. That's against the law. Only Trump does that. But basically, keep track of the people who you register and then get back to them, because we do a lot of voter registration, but it's really voter turnout that's going to make a difference here.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. And that's what I said in the session today, that it's not about a percentage, that we have to look at the numbers. When I was talking to Ambassador Andrew Young, when he ran for Congress, 75% of eligible Black voters voted his congressional race. A week before the race, he was down 5 points. Harold Washington, when he became the first Black mayor of Chicago, 85% of Black Chicagoans who were eligible to vote actually voted. And so what I keep saying is that we're literally limiting our power because we're not turning out. And so when you're turning out at 18 and 20 and 25%, I mean, look, Atlanta came very close to getting a white mayor twice because of low turnout. And so one of the reasons this city is considered the Black Mecca economically is because they have had Black mayors since 1973. Maynard Jackson, Andrew Young, Maynard Jackson, Bill Campbell, Shirley Franklin, Kasim Reed, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Andre Dickens, because folks were turning out. And so we have to, and I understand there are people out there who are frustrated, who are angry, who think things have not been done. But here is the reality which Steve Harvey alluded to. If you don't vote, they're guaranteed not to pay you any attention. If you don't vote, they're guaranteed not to do anything for you. And so we need to explain to people that voting is not the be all to end all, but again, it's a part of this process. It's one piece of it. Now, after the election is over, whether your candidate won or not, you're still a constituent, which means that we have to now be fully active in trying to still get our issues addressed. And so we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to do this, constantly between now and November, because far too many of us are sitting on the sidelines, and I keep making it clear, the couch is an option for people, but it should never be an option because we're leaving our power at home.